All right. Welcome, everyone. I am Eve Samples, Executive Director at Friends of the Everglades. Welcome to our clean water conversation this month, the case against sugarcane burning. This is an issue we've talked about before at Friends of the Everglades, and we have some really informed and important allies to introduce you to today. Thank you for being here. Before we dive into the meat of the conversation, I want to just say that we're able to bring these monthly live streams to Friends of the Everglades supporters and other interested Floridians and residents because of the support of our donors. So thank you for that. Ameriprise Financial does underwrite our clean water conversations. And we think it's a really critical way to keep folks engaged in terms of what policymakers are doing that affects our health, that affects our environment from the comfort of your own home. So if you're joining us live, please grab your lunch and get ready for an interesting conversation. We'll tackle as many questions as we can the last 15 minutes or so. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guests. First, we have Robert Mitchell, who is a resident of Belle Glade. He's joining us from Belle Glade today, and he's a leader in the effort to stop sugarcane burning near the Glades communities around Lake Okeechobee. Robert, I am honored to say, is also a member of the board of directors of Friends of the Everglades. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And next we have Patrick Ferguson. Patrick is an organizing representative for Sierra Club's Stop Sugarfield Burning campaign based out of the Sierra Club office in Belle Glade. Patrick is one of the most informed people I know on the topic at hand today, sugarcane burning and the health impacts. And we're really honored to have you back here today. Welcome, Patrick.
Honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Finally, and last but not least, we have Carol Lindsay. Carol is a family nurse practitioner who's a steering committee member of the Florida Clinicians for Climate Action. And she's an advocate for policies promoting climate, health, and equity. Really important trilogy there. She's also an active member of the Alliance for Nurses for Healthy Environments and the Clio Institute. And we noticed the group Carol's affiliated with, Florida Clinicians for Climate Action, because of a really remarkable op-ed that appeared in the Palm Beach Post just recently. So welcome, Carol. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having us here.
Great. So we'll jump into it. We have about an hour. We'll talk for 45 minutes and address some of the latest developments on the sugarcane burning front. Unfortunately, we have a lot of inaction in terms of sugarcane burning regulations that we'll update folks on. And then we'll get to questions, as I mentioned. So if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, put your questions in the chat and we'll get to as many of those as possible. So I'm going to share my screen here and orient us to the problem, because this is a very visible problem in the Glades communities. And if Allie behind the scenes can go ahead and share my screen, that would be great. Okay, so this was the first official day of sugarcane burning season in Belle Glade, Florida. And you can see there the smoke, the haze in the air that is indicative of what we'll be talking about today. Oftentimes, the burns are much more dramatic looking than this, and I'm going to show some subsequent pictures from past years. But this is a pretty commonplace occurrence from October through March for sure, and sometimes extending all the way through May. So a majority of the year, residents are afflicted with these conditions. And unfortunately, burn protections are much more favorable to coastal communities than the communities south of Lake Okeechobee. These are some more dramatic images illustrating what we can see when sugarcane burning season is going on. And this is pre-harvest sugarcane burning. It's a faster and cheaper way for sugarcane growers to get rid of what's called the trash around the sugarcane stalk so they can harvest it. But it's definitely far more harmful to public health, and that's what we'll be talking about today. So there's increasing awareness of the problems related to sugarcane burning. You know, I spoke with Patrick and Robert on a live stream about a year ago, and we didn't have the public attention on this issue that we've seen in the last 6 months or so. And one of the reports that really opened people's eyes was this project that I'm showing a map of here, that illustrated, this was done by National Public Radio and Stanford University, and it illustrated some of the smokiest places in the country. And of course, Stanford's based in California, and you'd expect to see smoky counties, zip codes in that region where wildfires are so common. However, we zoomed in on Florida, and the report pointed out that the worst zip codes in the entire US in
Mhm.
terms of smoke days were even higher than California, were in parts of Palm Beach County, Hendry, Glades, and Okeechobee counties where sugarcane is burned. So this map really tells a story about what we're talking about. It's undeniable. Stanford and NPR looked at a decade's worth of data, and we have it right here for us to see. Another development in recent months that has opened people's eyes to this problem is some very important investigative reporting done by ProPublica and the Palm Beach Post into the harmful effects of sugarcane burning and the disproportionate way they impact Glades residents south of Lake Okeechobee. You can see here one of the reports from this past summer. This was published in July, and it went into detail on the impacts on children in particular who are asthmatic, and how the smoke particulate matter from the smoke can really aggravate some of these conditions. And I just share this slide because it's important to note that this is not a rare occurrence. It's almost every single day during the winter and spring that fields are burned, sugarcane fields are burned. So it releases harmful smoke, and it's throughout the year. And this also is drawn from the ProPublica and Palm Beach Post reporting. And the burns last about an hour, but about 25 fields a day are burned. So you can see that this really has a cumulative impact. It's become just a fact of life in the Glades communities, and a difficult one. And this is the last slide I'll show for now, because it might be the most important point that we need to talk about today. The harmful health impacts of sugarcane burning are known by public health officials in Florida, and the Palm Beach Post and ProPublica revealed that years ago, public health officials in Palm Beach County looked into this issue, produced draft reports on this issue, and yet failed to take action. So that might be the most concerning thing that we have to discuss today. So I think we can take the slides down. Allie's our Director of Communications at Friends of the Everglades. I know she's kind of faceless if you're watching, but she's very important here. And we'll dive into the meat of the conversation. So Robert, I would like to turn to you first and just ask you what it's like in your hometown of Belglade, where you are right now, when sugarcane fields are burning. Describe for us what conditions are like and the impact that they have on residents, please.
All right, thank you. And I thank all the panel for being here today. I'm representing for my hometown, and in Belglade, a beautiful city with a lot of potential. The very name itself means the most beautiful space. And so that's interesting right now because we're being actually choked by smoke. So in our community, as a little boy growing up, sugar burning was something that I endured pretty much all of my life. And I always had an issue with it, but not necessarily knowing exactly what could be done. And especially once I got into adulthood, and I was starting to see the different things. And something you mentioned earlier when you talked about California, because most people would think that when you talk about burns, you hear all these fires in California. Well, guess what? I've also been bi-coastal, and I live in Los Angeles, and I can tell you when the smoke that the people in the Glades experience, meaning myself, my family, that type of smoke, when it's happening in California, you see about 10, 15 helicopters trying to put it out. It's not anything that consistently burns. But in the Mug City, for those who don't know, as Eve said earlier, this is a consistent smoke and burning and ash that falls on the community pretty much 6 months out of the year consistently. So we know that it's helping, it's affecting our health. Not only that, you have residents that has had to move out of the Glades because the smoke was so intense, the health problems that they had to make a choice. Either they stay and suffer, and unfortunately, we know what can happen if they stay and do that, or they have to move out. And I know people personally that have left the Glades specifically because of the smoke. And so this is something that we've been dealing with in a long time. And not only that, when you talk about the families here, we have a large case of asthma issues in our community, or respiratory issues all around. My family is affected by it as well, and the parents here, they dread it. They dread when the sugar burning season starts, because they know that the ER is going to be seeing a lot of us more naturally than we do when it's on the off season. And also, just talking about this, I want to make it very clear out there when we talk about this ash and smoke that is being burnt over our community, the ash actually falls down on our homes. It falls on our cars. It falls on this white shirt that I have on. It falls on anything that is around during the season. And not one incentive is given from the mill that does this, from a $1 billion company in a city that's ranked #1 poorest city in Florida. They can just throw ash and treat us like we're trash and give us no incentive for it. And I know right now we do have there's a pending lawsuit that is going on that I'm not a part of, but I'm very interested in, and it's covering those things right there, the property damage, because that's a big part that doesn't get included. But right now at my home right now, I still have to renovate my roof because guess what? The deterioration of the smoke and the ash that comes on it. And so, and lastly, I'll say, just my own issues here with this smoke, being that I've been able to live on another coast, is very interesting and it's very tricky because anytime I'm back in Los Angeles, I'm breathing better. Everything is clear. I even sing a little bit. I can't do it today, but I do. And anytime I come back home, I automatically, for years, I was confused. I'm like, why do I always get hoarse? I would always get a hoarseness to my voice that I couldn't really perform or sing. And I'm like, Lord, please don't let nobody book me because I'm not going to do well in Florida, or maybe I need to fly right in and sing immediately before sitting in that air. And over the years, I explained, I said, oh my God, the light bulb went off. I'm like, it's the smoke. It is this heavy smoke that is causing problems, even with myself personally. So this is an issue, like we say, that's been going on for a while. And the funny thing about it, when we talk about the muck, you have 3 main cities that are majority African American and Black and brown communities. But when you go over to our eastern communities, which is the more affluent, or in some would even say white communities, interestingly, they cannot burn when the wind is projected to blow to the east. So these are issues that we're dealing with and things that we're facing here. And I'm glad that we have soldiers and people that are willing to speak truth to power, like the ones here today, on this very, very, very bad issue that we need solutions and we need them now. So thank you. That's a little piece about it for the Glades for me.
Thank you, Robert. It's very helpful to hear what the burn feels like when you're sitting in the Glades communities for months at a time or live there full time. I just drove across the state last week from Southwest Florida to Stewart, and I saw cane burning in the distance. And it's one thing to see it from afar. It's another thing to live with it almost every day. So thank you.
And just to throw something in there, I remember shopping at our local Winn-Dixie, and this was last year during the burning season. And we have travelers that come through the route all the time. And someone was at our local grocery store, and it was a guy. He came up to me. He was like, "Hey, I seen the fire going on and the smoke that's going on. What's going on in the community?" Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, first of all, you can calm down a little bit. I said, because guess what? If you come back tomorrow, you'll still see that smoke. This is something that is happening every day in our community. So this is not an uncontrolled fire here. This is a out of control fire that is given permission by people just like our Commissioner of Agriculture. So, a lot of different things. But I want to put that in there. When people see it that are way, they really think that something is like, oh my God, what's happening? Are they putting it out? No, they're not. No, they are not.
Yes. And that's why every country except China and the US has worked to phase out sugarcane burning, but we're going to get to that. So thank you, Robert. I'd like to turn to Carol now to talk about some of the healthcare impacts. As a healthcare provider, you have special insight to this. So the Palm Beach Post and ProPublica reporting showed that hospital and emergency room visits in Belle Glade rose by 35% during cane burning season. And they compared the Belle Glade zip code to others of similar population size, racial makeup, and median household income to try to compare apples to apples. And they found that still Belle Glade was worse afflicted. So as a healthcare provider, Carol, can you explain why that would be? What kind of health conditions would be linked to cane burning?
Sure. And even Robert, you both have already alluded to that, and the articles pointed that out also. Well, just that because the Everglades, when the sugarcane's burning, it's releasing emissions that cause air pollution. So it's releasing something called particulate matter, which you spoke to earlier, which can cause medical issues. It also releases other things like carbonyls, like formaldehyde is one of the carbonyls, and fine polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which is a very serious air pollutant that can cause carcinogenic results. So with these things in the air, if people are breathing them in, like Robert has attested to actually being there, it's going to irritate the respiratory tract. And so that's what's causing these people to show up into the emergency room. It's more acute, where they're going in there with respiratory problems. It can just be that they don't have asthma, but it's causing them to cough and to respond in that way. If they do have asthma, it might exacerbate the symptoms of the asthma. And in addition, when you breathe in these type of air pollutants, it goes deep into your lungs and it can get into your bloodstream, and it can cause more serious problems. It's been associated with premature heart attacks and non-fatal heart attacks, and also arrhythmias and some other issues, and even some cancer in some of the studies that were done in other countries. But bottom line, they're showing up to those to the emergency room with respiratory problems because the air is so polluted from the sugarcane burning.
It's alarming. And one of the things that's worth noting is that the Florida legislature has worked against us in this regard. Last year, they approved what's known as the Right to Farm bill, which protected many farming practices in a reasonable way. But the unreasonable thing it did was it added particulate matter, right? Particle emissions to the list of protected farming activities that farmers could not be sued for. Meaning, if you live in Belle Glade, 3/4 of a mile from burns that you're regularly exposed to, you no longer have a right to bring that to a court to protect your rights. So we called for a veto of that. We opposed that at Friends of the Everglades. Unfortunately, it passed anyway, and we think it should be repealed. So that's unfortunate. And thank you, Carol, for explaining the healthcare implications in more detail. Really alarming, all the conditions that this is associated with. So Patrick, I'd like to turn to you now. Across about 400,000 acres of sugarcane crops, which is what we're talking about in Florida, there's one air quality monitor in Belle Glade, and it has produced suspect air quality readings. And I know that air quality monitoring is just one part of the conversation, because you can monitor how bad it is all day long, but if you don't change the policy, it doesn't fix it. But we'll get to that. But what could the state of Florida be doing to better track air quality in the Glades, Patrick?
Right. So first and foremost, it's been known since at least about 2013 that the one air quality monitor in place for that entire sugarcane burning region within Belle Glade is a non-regulatory air quality monitor. And what that means is that it doesn't meet the quality assurance standards required by the EPA for its readings to be determined for compliance with national ambient air quality monitoring standards. That hasn't stopped the sugar industry from using that air quality monitor to show they're in compliance with everything, and there's no problem with sugarcane burning. Another big issue with that is that it relies upon 24-hour averages as far just for particulate matter pollution over time. And that can miss short-term spikes in air pollution, which is consistent with sugarcane burns. So that air quality monitor, in conjunction with all the more detailed air quality monitoring studies that have taken place in the past, one from FIU in particular found that there was an increase of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons by as much as 15 times during the harvesting season.
Okay, I'm sorry. What is that you just said, Patrick?
PAHs. Carol Lindsay talked about a little bit earlier, but it's a carcinogenic pollutant known to be released by sugarcane burning. But case in point, the ProPublica investigative reporting, they actually placed air quality monitors within the community. And they found that when smoke plumes blew towards the Glades communities, that there were readings that recorded as much as a 4 times increase of particulate matter pollution than otherwise average background levels that was not picked up on the singular air quality monitor in existence. So to go to your question about what can the state do better, so sure, they can put in more air quality monitors and get more accurate readings, but the real problem here is political will. So we can get all the great data in the world, and there's a long history in Florida and throughout the United States of strong data on environmental impacts and health threats not translating into meaningful reform. Case in point is Cancer Alley in Louisiana, where in 2015 the EPA stepped in, put in several air quality monitors, and years afterwards we're still they're still recording exceedances of for toxic levels of pollution in the area with no substantive change. But one thing that could be helpful is that the FDEP and the EPA could step in and require the sugar industry to record and account for all the pollution emissions from pre-harvest sugar field burning in the same way that they have to account for the pollution that is emitted through their smokestacks, the sugarcane mills, for compliance with their Title V permit and other permits to show compliance with air quality monitoring standards. But ultimately, the biggest obstacle to this problem comes down to political will. And, case in point was the Right to Harm Act that Eve mentioned that passed with widespread bipartisan support, despite the fact that it was blatantly meant to provide protections for the sugar industry.
Right. The slide we have up on the screen now shows just how far these ash plumes can extend. In 2018, one of them was measured at 26.21 miles. So we at Friends of the Everglades have joined the Stop the Burn effort to call for 26 plus mile buffer zones, 26 to 30 mile buffer zones around burns to protect Glades residents. And unfortunately, that has not been acted upon yet. So I would like to turn back to Robert now to talk about air quality monitoring and actually the solution beyond air quality monitoring, because that's just one part of the conversation. It's not the ultimate solution. So what are the solutions that you, Robert, and the Stop the Burn movement are calling for in Florida? And we can go back.
Thank you. That's a
great slide.
That's a great question. And that's the thing about it. When they talk about air quality monitoring, this is something, yes, it always can help, but it's also a way to take up time and just procrastinate on what needs to be done. They did not need air quality monitoring when they stopped the ash and smoke from burning over on the east. They didn't need air quality. The only thing they needed was some residents up in Palm Beach, more affluent than the residents down in the Glades, to speak up. And guess what? All of a sudden, poof, they're protected. I don't know what they needed for as quality air monitoring in Clewiston around the Walmart, because if you ever shop over in the Walmart, you'll notice that you're not fighting and battling the smoke falling from the sky. Why? Because they put protections around there. So what we need, the air quality monitoring, I definitely support, as it's always good to know as much as you can know from that area. But for a solution, absolutely, the 27-mile buffer zone is what we need as an immediate solution. And what that means is, in our area right now, if you was to look at the burn map, the Glades area, who is mostly impacted, we're pretty much smothered by the cane fields because they surround us. So everything pushes us in. And I even talked to that department, and they tried to say that they have predictions that allow the smoke to blow over the city. And I had to let them know, well, listen, it's on my car, so it's not making it over. So I don't know what you predicted there. So that would be the easiest, I think, solution, is to give us that 27-mile at the minimum, 27 to 30-mile buffer zone, so that the city can breathe. And in those areas that they decide to not burn, that's when our main solution comes in, and that's the conversation of green harvesting. Green harvesting is the way. It's such the common sense solution on both sides. It's a win-win for everyone, because a lot of times, even and guests here, they like to talk about people like myself and say, oh, they're trying to get rid of the mill. They like you say, the right to farm. They're against farming. Well, not this country, boy. I come straight from agriculture, and I have a great appreciation of my agriculture. I just don't want to die for it. I don't want to to, you know what I'm saying, if it's better alternatives out there. And green harvesting is that, because not only does green harvesting makes cleaner air for everyone on the right now in a city that's ranked #1 poorest city, it provides a economic engine that is undeniable. Because now, instead of actually burning the leaves of the cane, because what's choking us is them burning the leaves, those actual leaves are actually green gold. They're green gold because they make so many products. They make mulch. They can produce electricity. Just they plasticware. Just, it's so many things that anybody listening will be like, wait a minute, why won't they? Why are they not? Why are they not doing this? And to me, and if you go further than that, if you go back and look back around 2008, before the market crash, the very sugar industry itself bragged about the benefits of green harvesting, bringing it to the community, because it's something that they already do. They already know how to do it. They just don't want to do it in a consistent way that allows the people of the muck to breathe. So when you look at it, when you really look at the solution here, you're looking at it because when you see to our east here, you know what I'm saying, they don't really look like me, guys. They're not black and brown communities there. So when you bring the race issue in it, it becomes more highlighted than ever when you look at the type of community that they're allowing this type of injustice to happen on, especially like you said earlier, Eve, when everybody else who is just as big as the sugar industry, as far as producing sugar cane, has all merged over to green harvesting because they know the positive effects of it. So I do support air monitoring to a certain point, but right now we have a quick solution, and that's give us a buffer. You know what I'm saying? Allow my people to breathe in those areas around there. Green harvest those fields. You know what I'm saying? Or listen, there's other areas that we can bring in agriculture wise as well into the muck that can actually get us off a list that says we are the #1 poorest city in Belgrade, and the rest of the other 2 cities make the top 10. So we have a lot of engines that can do that. So even though I support air monitoring, but there's a solution with giving us a 27-mile buffer and also merging into green harvesting. That'll be a win-win for everybody, for our health, for the community, and just everybody in the whole. So that's my comment to that.
Thanks, Robert. And we are starting to get some questions that we will turn to. It is perplexing that these solutions, transition to green harvesting and buffer zones, have not been implemented when the health impacts are so very clear now, clearer than ever. And from our perspective at Friends of the Everglades, I don't think there's any bigger issue of environmental justice that is in Florida right now. This is a clear-cut discrepancy between how wealthier, whiter communities in Florida are protected versus mostly black and brown communities in the Glades. And we don't think it's excusable. And thank you for explaining your position on it, Robert.
And I appreciate it. Even I'd like to just add in there, because we have right now, we have a commissioner. We have Commissioner Nikki Freed. She has the power. She has the say-so that she can stop this. And right now, my community, we know in America, period, in the whole world, we're dealing with a pandemic that affects our respiratory system. They didn't even have the courtesy during COVID, and we're still in COVID, to stop every season. They still allowed it to burn in the heaviest season of COVID last year. So what does that say? How are they caring for the community when you didn't even have a courtesy to stop it, even for something that medical professionals told you that you should do?
Right.
You know, everybody.
That's a great segue. I want to ask Carol about COVID connections, and then we're going to come to Patrick to talk about what Nikki Freed's office, the Department of Agriculture Consumer Services, is doing now and why it's not enough. So, Carol, the Centers for Disease Control did call for a pause to agricultural burning during the COVID-19 pandemic. It did not happen in the sugarcane region of Florida. Obviously, we're still seeing those burns. Why was that important? Why is it important during a respiratory pandemic?
Well, it's important. And by the way, I believe that the sugarcane industry thought that they were excluded from that. But it's a COVID. In a lot of patients, it affects their lung function. It becomes diminished. So when they're breathing that in, that's even going to irritate more what is being irritated by COVID. And you all probably know that it affects the lungs additionally on some patients. So that's why they were trying to stop the burn, because of all the emissions, all the pollutants that the people could breathe in, that Robert was explaining that he's breathed in, and people in his community, which is going to make the COVID even worse. And there was even a study that maybe some of you are familiar with that came out of Harvard that said that it's possible that there's an increase of 8% in fatality from COVID when there's a presence of particulate matter of 2.5 micrograms, which is what is in the emissions from the burning of sugarcane. So that's why the CDC passed that. And I recently went on their website, and they're saying the information may be old. So they're not enforcing it. They were just recommending that there not be any agricultural burning during that time.
Right. And what a great opportunity that would have been for Florida to try to better protect residents and try to accelerate green harvesting, right? No better excuse than a global pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too bad. They do have, they can switch to green harvesting. I mean, they do provide services to the people in Florida. They provide jobs. They give money to the community. You know, most of us use sugar, and all we're asking is that they green harvest like other countries are already doing, and they are doing themselves. They're doing it in Clewiston next to that Walmart. So they don't bother the people going into Walmart. Walmart wanted that done. But anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Carol. So Patrick, I'd like you to explain for our audience why the current burn restrictions are not adequate. These are governed by FDACS, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, which is governed by Nikki Fried. This is a bipartisan issue. Don't get me wrong. We've got Democrats working against us. We've got Republicans working against us in Florida. But what are we living with now? FDACS has rolled out some changes they've billed as improvements, but why aren't those helping enough?
Sure. So first and foremost, FDACS is in control, but the Florida Forest Service is in charge of enforcing the permitting on a daily basis. And what they take into account on a daily basis in order to approve or deny a permit is based on the location of the sugarcane field and also the wind conditions in place. So currently, there's now 6 different sugarcane burning zones. Each zone has slightly different wind-based speed and direction restrictions. But when you really break it down, and this just goes to show, despite some changes on paper that look a little bit more substantial, the underlying environmental justice issue is still largely in place. So what this looks like is when you have sugarcane burn zones that are closer to eastern Palm Beach County, and wind conditions would be projected to carry smoke and ash due to exceeding certain miles per hour speeds on a given day, then a burn permit will be denied. So then you go to sugarcane burning or sugar fields that are closer to the Glades communities, and they're blowing towards the Glades communities with the same miles per hour wind direction. Those permits will be approved. Now, one of the changes that is pointed to is these burns will be approved, but now we're requiring and mandating the use of backing fires when wind speeds are projected to carry smoke and ash towards the glades and are going over a certain set of miles per hour velocity.
And can you explain what a backing fire is for people who don't know?
Yes. So a backing fire is designed to create a fire on the opposite side of the field to where you're initially setting the fire, and it's designed in theory to make for a more quicker and controlled burn or a quote unquote cleaner burn. However, research has shown that because it makes for a quicker burn, it burns at a higher heat. Now, this creates more of a risk on the highly organic muck soils of creating muck fires, or what is also referred to as smoldering. And there's a lot of research that's been come out about problems that can be created on burning such highly organic soils that increases ground level ozone and ground level carbon monoxide, which produces its own separate set of pollution issues. So in reality, pointing to that, these slight changes is kind of like a smoker saying, "Hey, I'm not smoking Marlboro regulars anymore. I'm smoking Marlboro Lights," and calling that a significant change that is prioritizing the health of citizens. So now, going back, and then another important factor to bring up is, I've spoken to Florida Forest Service field agents who do the best they can, but openly admit they deal with the imperfect science of trying to predict wind conditions, which especially in Florida can change very quickly. And this is case in point why folks still throughout Palm Beach County, even living as far east as the coast, report dealing with smoke and ash, and folks with very sensitive respiratory issues still in Wellington, Loxahatchee, regularly report problems during the harvesting season, is because despite the prioritized protections in place, wind speeds can change very quickly. And so I say this in that, trying to rely on making all these tweaks, based on meteorological conditions, wind dispersion rates, is not a long-term solution. And the proof is in the pudding. In that overall, in the past 3 years, there has not been a significant decrease in the amount of burns nor the burn acreage. And, the growing data and anecdotal reports that you already hear, hear from Robert and other residents, show that, these changes haven't, as Commissioner Freed said, prioritized the health and safety of Florida residents. So this is why, as a campaign, in formalizing what's a concrete demand and a first step towards a regulatory step that can move the industry towards green harvesting, we've monitored the Florida Forest Service maps. And we found that sugarcane smoke and ash plume can extend over 26 miles in the region. So the closest we could come to allowing a burn and guaranteeing that there wouldn't be any issues is if there was a radius of minimum 27-mile buffer zone put in place. There seems to be some confusion I've heard as far as the Florida Forest Service and Commissioner Freed's authority over this issue. But let me just quote a current rule in the administrative code for the Florida Forest Service that's currently in place. This code, under the title "Open Burning Not Allowed," states that anytime the Florida Forest Service, if they make a determination that an open burn would impact public health and safety and nearby property damage, they have the authority to deny that burn. So Commissioner Freed can direct the Florida Forest Service, citing that authority that, hey, based on the growing data, any burn within this radius poses a threat to public health, especially considering the ongoing pandemic we're facing. So I'm going to use this authority I have to mandate that none of these unnecessary sugarcane burns that are only approved for the economic benefit of one industry be allowed. And that's what you call prioritizing the health and safety of all Floridians, as Commissioner Freed has previously said was her intention.
So Patrick, and I welcome others to chime in too. What do you think the aversion is to these changes? We've met with Commissioner Freed's office. They listen a lot. They point to the new zones and the changes, the phases of their regulations that they believe has improved it, and also sugarcane burn certification program. So if you're burning cane, you have to get certified, which also has not made any palpable difference in terms of air quality. I mean, there just seems to be a lack of political will, which you touched on, Patrick. Would you add anything to that?
If you look at just what happened with the Right to Harm Act in particular, and you look at all of the money in 2020, $11 million alone was spent by the Florida sugar industry. And, everything that, you see legislatively and everything you see within regulatory agencies who have a responsibility to hold the sugar industry to account and yet don't, is clearly a manifestation of this, resources really coming into play to help get the sugar industry what the sugar industry wants. And, too often, politicians will look at an issue like this and they weigh the pros and cons. They're like, oh, well, am I really going to sacrifice a political capital to, do the right thing and help out this, rural, smaller Glades community, predominantly a community of color, lower income? Or can I just kind of, try to make moves that cosmetically look good and give the appearance of addressing the issue, and not sacrifice any pushback by the sugar industry that could have harmful considerations down the road. So, that's certainly one take among many.
Yeah. We see this in our clean water efforts too. And the sugar industry is just one of the most powerful forces in all of Florida. So I do think that there's a ton of pressure there. But when you have undeniable evidence like we have now about the harm, there's just no excuse for protecting that industry.
Yeah, well, Eve, the money, I heard it. I heard it before I got on this journey of, as people will quote and say, politics, or I would say politics. I heard about that, and now I've seen it, because you have local leaders, our mayors from two cities, South Bend, Pahokee, that would actually go up and help a right to harm bill, and speak against the community. When you're actually sending regular resident, to me, when I'm telling people to look at it, you look at, when you see the politicians, a lot of times you expect certain things, because you know that some of them are not on their own will, unfortunately. But when you look at the real residents, that should give you the balance. And the residents that went up to Tallahassee, which was a local nun, for God's sake, a local nun, how can it get even better? And a previous former mayor, who should be mayor, but we see why they're probably not, because they're going up and they're holding things to the industry and to the power, be denied by our leaders that would go up a week after these local leaders, just like myself, come up and go up and tell people in Tallahassee, just to push sugar agenda along, that we love the smoke. Listen, we can't live without it. We wake up in the morning and need to smell smoke, because it's the best thing that comes for us. So when you see those type of tricks in politics, and not only that, for people don't know out there, I am a third-time candidate running for city commissioner in my beautiful city. And this last campaign showed the great power of the sugar industry, because it took me off by guard, because it wasn't my total focus, because we have so many issues. This is one of the main issues, you know what I'm saying? But we also have other issues, but they actually spent all type of money to actually to spread fear in my community. You heard things like Robert Mitchell is trying to get rid of the sugar mill, which is ridiculous. Oh, but I didn't know I was that powerful either, though. But just ridiculous, And you seen things like the sugar mill paying their workers to vote, actually providing a bus to take them down to the supervisor election and turn in absentee ballots. Those are the type of moves that you hear. All of this done, all of that money they spent on trying to go against us, when they could just use those same dollars to help these people breathe better and merge into green harvesting. Mm-hmm. It's just blowing my mind. So I don't even understand what it is. But on the politics side, our community leaders that we actually voted in to lead for us, they have sold our city out, and they're selling us out. And I hope they feel embarrassed now that people on the outside that are coming with nothing but facts, not propaganda, but just facts, are actually telling something totally different from them, as if they don't already know. This morning, I was talking to a regular resident that was talking to me, and I told him I was going to be on this call. And then she was like, Robert, my baby, this has asthma. This Sugarcane. And I'm like, please come on and say that. But a lot of times there's so much fear spread there, because the industry is, they're saying in one sense, listen, what are we going to do without the sugar industry? They provide jobs. Well, guess what? Guess what, out there, people watching? They only provide nothing less, only 20%. Only 20% of the actual jobs in the Glades are provided by, well, less than 20%. I'm sorry. It's less than 20% is provided by the sugar industry. People like myself and my friends and people that I'm around a lot, guess what? We don't even work for the industry, yet and still we got to suffer. So you have 80% of the people don't even work for your industry, but you can come and bully them with smoke and ash? Make that make sense to me. You know what I'm saying? But our politicians, hopefully we get better in that area. But right now they are not doing. They say that they're guardians of the glades, but it seems like they're guardians of the sugar mill. So yes, so I just want to put that in there. But
no, it's important, Robert, and you see it day in and day out when you're in the glades. So thank you for bringing that to light.
Politics, yes.
So I do want to talk a little bit more about green harvesting. We have this alternative. It's safer. It's used outside of Florida by sugarcane growers. And Patrick, I want to ask you why it isn't happening on a widespread basis in Florida.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, just to briefly touch upon why it's been the trend of modern developed sugarcane growing nations throughout the world, and even the state of Louisiana has taken a more progressive approach. But where we've seen actual laws passed, and there's been industry agreements in places like Brazil to completely phase out practice, there's no debate about the negative health impacts. And there's also an understanding garnered over time where they've seen the agronomic benefits of utilizing the sugarcane trash as mulch, but also utilizing sugarcane trash to economically generate more electricity, create biofuels, bioproducts, etc. Interesting point is that where there's a big push in countries like India and Thailand right now, where the government is putting together programs to slowly phase out. A big part of that push is to make sure that farmers have access to modern mechanical sugarcane harvesters, all the ones that the Florida sugar industry currently has, that are equipped to green harvest. And where you see burning happening elsewhere in the world, it's largely because, when you don't have this modern equipment, it's much easier for manual cane cutters to come in and cut the cane when the outer leafy plant material is burned off. But let's go back to what makes Florida an outlier. First and foremost, we hear the sugar industry talk wax poetic about how certain climate and soil conditions in Florida just don't make it as suitable as it is elsewhere in the world. First and foremost, that doesn't match up with some of the latest agronomic research, including the only long-term study comparing burnt sugarcane versus green harvested sugarcane carried out by the University of Florida IFAS, which found over the course of that long-term experiment, there's no significant difference in yields from burnt cane versus green harvested cane. So it really comes down to the costs involved. And the costs cited by the sugar industry are increased transportation and processing costs involved with having to manage all the excess plant material. And there's a couple things that the industry could do in tweaking their harvesting infrastructure to ameliorate this. First and foremost is cane cleaning infrastructure that we see is commonly employed in places where green harvesting is carried out. Because the billets, which carry the sugar going into the mill, if they're mixed in with more trash that inevitably happens when you green harvest, that could interfere with the amount of sugar that you're able to ultimately glean through the milling process. So by creating certain infrastructure in place, you can ameliorate that. And also they could remove an archaic practice which penalizes farmers for bringing in trash or cane billets with excess trash. So they dock their pay based off of the percentage of trash that's included. So get rid of that. But the big factor is corporate partnerships. Partnering with industry to utilize the sugarcane trash to create biofuels, bioproducts. I mean, there's a company out there right now, Verde Visions, who has expressed interest in using sugarcane trash to create sustainable biofuels for the shipping industry. But there hasn't been any of the will by the industry to make any of these investments, nor, unfortunately, has there been assistance from the state government to help provide funding to facilitate such partnerships. And, I'd be happy to go into questions. There's a lot of emerging in questions go into this more deeper, but there's a lot of emerging research and opportunities that can be taken advantage of. But one of the main reasons that this, when you got to ask yourself, why is Florida, falling behind in innovation and sustainability? You have to take into account the business model that is created stemming from the federal sugar program. So for those of you who don't know, the federal sugar program provides a series of price supports and protections by giving set allotments and quotas to major sugarcane producers each year, and providing restrictions on the importation of international sugarcane, which in effect on most years artificially makes the price of domestic sugar as much as 2 times more expensive than what it's worth on the global market. So what this creates is a scenario where, hey, a way to maximize the profits in this system is to reduce their overhead costs at all corners. And that's what you see with, archaic burning still taking place. So it makes you think that, yeah, hey, it's fine to protect a domestic industry, but if we're going to protect a domestic industry, shouldn't these benefits come with the requirement that the Florida sugar industry implement the most modern, sustainable, and healthy practices, and not have to, ruthlessly cut costs at every corners at the expense of poisoning the very communities and environment that they have relied upon to generate the wealth that they enjoy today. And one last point of emphasis is, a lot of the onus on all these problems comes at the executives of these big sugar companies. Too often, it's tried to be framed as an attack on, small farmers and everybody who works in the sugar industry. That's certainly not the case, because, all these folks, don't have a say in these types of important decisions. So this is not an attack on anyone but those within the sugar industry who know better and have the authority to make these decisions. And one last quote that I always use to help folks make sense of this comes from the famous environmental attorney David Guest, who spent years in dealing with the sugar industry. And he used the analogy that you got to look at them more as subsidy farmers versus sugar farmers. If given the choice to buy 5 tractors or 5 lobbyists every time, they'll choose the lobbyists every time. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff there, Patrick. And the federal price supports and import quotas that prop up the industry are really worth noting in this discussion. Thank you for pointing it out. And let's just name names too. We're talking about sugarcane growers, 400,000 acres in the glades, in and around the glades. This is U.S. Sugar and Florida Crystals. The bulk of these farming operations are linked back to those 2 companies that are connected with very wealthy families. So let's just put that on the table. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we don't have a ton of time left, and we do have a few questions. But Carol, there's an important one I want to ask you first. So the health department in Palm Beach County performed multiple studies over the decades. This was in the ProPublica and Palm Beach Post reporting, and it showed the link between cane burning and toxic pollution. Yet the health department did not pursue what's called a health risk assessment that could have been done with the Centers for Disease Control and state health officials to get more information about how to address this. So what's your view on why there wasn't action there, and where should we go from here?
Well, I can only speculate, and we haven't spoken directly to the health department, but it could be that they don't consider it a priority. It could be lack of funds for it. And it also could be pressure from the governor's office and from the sugarcane industry, unfortunately, not to pursue anything regarding that. As you all have spoken about already, how strong they are financially and how they seem to be in everybody's pockets. I think even some of the medical providers in that area won't speak out against them, because the sugarcane industry probably gives to them too. They're so powerful, unfortunately. But that's all that we can do, is we can speculate. We're probably going to reach out to the Palm Beach County Health Department, to an epidemiologist there, and ask her why they haven't pursued that. They did do some kind of risk assessments in the past, and they have noted that in some of the articles, the ProPublica article that showed that absolutely there were health risks. But unfortunately, they haven't acted on any of the recommendations from those health assessments, and they're not willing to do this health risk assessment from the CDC right now. Mm-hmm. And we're so concerned, the Florida Coalition for Climate Action, we've been working with Patrick with the Sierra Club. Also, we're concerned not only of the health, but also of the equity issues. It's just, they're so powerful, unfortunately, but we haven't given up hope yet. So hopefully.
Right.
And the awareness is much broader than it was previously. Inside the Glades communities, Robert, you have long known and understood the depth of this problem, but outside there's increasing awareness, and that's going to be really important to drive change.
And
Okay.
a lot of awareness, a lot of awareness. I really want to give that the credit and let anybody know that because I know what Carol was saying, but oh no, the voices have been making it out there. I appreciate all the energy that has come in, and not only that, we would probably be more ahead if we talked about what we talked about earlier with the political corruption there. Because sometimes when the industry do want to come in and study, and you have people at the gate saying, "Oh no, we love it this way," you know, it makes it a very conflict, especially if they don't have the actual real citizens that and hear their real complaints. You know, you have mayors around here that are saying, "I never heard any complaints at all about the smoke." Uh, you can't pay anybody in the muck to agree with that. That's a plain out lie. So when you have lies like that, it doesn't fall on surprise that when industry coming in and trying to look in and reach out a hand, when you get at the door and you're met with, "Oh no, we don't need any help." It's like, for real, you know what I'm saying? But now with all the voices surrounding us, people are being a little more smarter and using their common sense and not just looking at propaganda and fear. So yeah.
So we'll get to some of our questions now. And before we dive in, I just want to say that Drew Martin, who's watching, he thanked us for having this discussion. And he points out that this is also a climate change issue because of the carbon released from burning. And I'm sure that's why Clinicians for Climate Action is involved as well. We've been talking mostly about health and injustice, but that's a big factor. So Allie, if you don't mind behind the scenes queuing up our first question, we'll tackle a few. Okay, so Ted Burkhart asks, will you set up a coalition of organizations to unite to pressure the corporations that own sugar fields to change from burning to green harvesting? So a great question about a coalition. I'll pass it to Patrick because I know you've really been key in organizing some of the groups. Does that exist or do we need to work on that?
Sure. So in the past, we have put together a sign-on letter that included over 200 different organizations, which was directed towards Commissioner Freed, asking her to put in place the minimum 27-mile buffer zone protections that we talked about today. Ideally now that we've got so much more awareness on this situation that we could really expand upon that number. You know, that just focused on Florida-based organizations. Carol Lindsay's FCCA organization was one of those signatories, and so was Eve Samples, Friends of the Everglades, that have always been a great ally of this organization. But you know what? That sounds like a great activity for volunteers, to really take ownership and control on their own to start reaching out to organizations they know and see if they'd be interested in joining into that sign-on letter and formally and exploring, to what lengths they'd be willing to step forward and help us in speaking truth to power and demanding pre-harvest sugar field burning ending and that green harvesting, the modern, sustainable, safe solution, be implemented.
Great, thanks. We'll queue up the next question, which I understand is in 3 parts. So let me see if I can tackle this. Okay, this is from Dave Preston, who is a member of the Friends of the Everglades board. He says the Florida Department of Agriculture claims they are taking measures to improve air quality and reduce the negative impacts of burning. And the next part of that question is, and we can pause here, how do we and they have any idea as to whether their practices are having any effect on conditions in the glades? So Robert or Patrick, would you like to weigh in on that? Maybe Robert, you could start because you're there, you see it. How can we know if the FDAX rules we talked about earlier are having any impact at all?
Well, the thing about this, I like the whole conversation that we're having is this is something that is actually happening. This is when it's the burning, you can see the burning. When it's the black snow, you can see it falling down. So when I start seeing less of that, that's when I know everything that I need to know. When that is rid away, because again, we was on that call together, where the forestry they talked about different measures that they was putting in to manage the smoke and how to blow over the city and things of that nature. And clearly, like I said, it's still falling on my house. It's falling on my clothes. So these are the things that I think that we can do once this is rid. You know, it'll be a solution. And the thing about it, and when I talk like this, because on this call we make it seem like it's so hard for this change to happen. However, when back in the 90s, when Wellington got together in their community and they screamed about it, the state and everybody made immediate action. When Walmart put what they did, they made immediate action. So I just hate the whole feeling like, oh my God, this just takes so. Listen, give us a 27-mile buffer. Give that to our community, and let's go to green harvesting and make some money together and help some people live better. That's how we can see all of it. So I hope that answered the question, Eve. But
it does. I mean, there's statistics and then there's ground truth, and you're seeing the ground truth. So enough said, I think. We have time for one more question. We'll queue up a last question. This is from Eric Jackson. I understand how the sugarcane burning negatively affects air quality, but how does this egregious abuse affect water quality? Patrick, I know you have a good answer to that.
Yes. So first and foremost, any pollution that you're releasing out in the atmosphere, through the process of atmospheric deposition, finds its way back to the ground. And that includes the nearby waterways within the region. And we know we have Lake Okeechobee. And we have, the sensitive Everglades watershed. And, there is data showing that the atmospheric deposition from agricultural fires can increase nitrogen phosphorus loads from the many other sources that are already entering into these waterways, contributing to what I'm sure everyone who's tuning in now knows the very serious algal bloom issue and red tide issue that Florida is facing. Also, the continuous burning of the fields limits the abilities of the soils to strengthen water retention. So that increase the manner in which this industrial scale tilling focused agricultural takes place weakens soils and ultimately contributes to runoff pollution too. But really importantly, I think unfortunately, too often in the past that this issue has been kept separate in a silo to the overall issues caused from industrial scale agriculture and their impacts on water quality in Florida. But, really, when you're talking about trying to address holistically a cleaner, better, and more equitable environment for all, we're all in this together, folks. And, nothing could strengthen the clean water movement more than really, tying the connections into the sugarcane burning issue here in the Glades. And likewise, it strengthens, the fight for clean air more when everybody who's involved in the clean water fight comes together in solidarity. So I hope that can answer your question.
I think you nailed it. And that's exactly why Friends of the Everglades came to this issue last year. And it's really become one of our top priorities. So thank you for answering that. It's the perfect question to end on, since we do call these clean water conversations. And obviously we talked a lot about clean air. We talked a lot about justice, but to end it with water really feels fitting. So there's a lot more to learn and keep track of. For those of you listening who want to stay involved, please check out Stop the Burn social media accounts on Facebook and Twitter. Also, you can go to everglades.org, sign up for our emails. We regularly email updates on this topic and others. So stay engaged with us. We will continue to apply pressure on Nikki Fried's office to embrace those buffer zones, to phase out burning altogether, to shift to green harvesting. And we also are hoping for a repeal of that bad right to farm, right to harm bill last year, the sugarcane burning provision. So thank you, Robert. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Patrick. You're a wealth of information, and this conversation will continue. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care.